We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. Hi, I'm Dr. J, and welcome to this week's 5-Minute Friday. I have a background of a master's in human performance / applied sports science and a doctorate in sport and performance psychology. This week, we're going to cover routine and the effect that routines has on our ability to compete consistently and effectively. We are what we repeatedly do. And so when we look at that deeper, we think about that deeper, and we look at how to apply this to different contexts of our lives. The automatic habits that we have, the automatic behaviors that we have, the learned behaviors that we have through continuous and repeated processes, those are going to be the things that we do. And with those being the things that we do, if those are not good habits as far as things that will help us be more productive, things that will help us stay focused, or things that will help us eliminate distractions or free us from some of the stress or the potential anxiety of making more decisions, those habits and those routines are not serving us well. And so when we look to build habits as athletes, as people, as effective career humans, we want to have habits that are building us towards habits of excellence and towards streamlining different areas of our life. And these routines are not going to be strict. These routines are built for us to adapt so that we can adapt and that we can overcome any challenges that might come our way. Oftentimes on the side of sports psychology, when we bring up the thought of routines, a lot of people have some reservations and have some resistance to that. They think that routines might A, take too much time and slow them down, B, that a routine could be restrictive or not allow them to be able to have some flexibility. So a routine could be considered to be limiting. And C, they might have already had a routine and they stopped it for whatever reason and they haven't decided to go back to that, or didn't remember what changed between here and then that stopped them from having that routine. And so when we look at those reasons that kind of inhibit us from developing these good habits, we need to remember that routines are effective, but also we get to choose these routines that we have, right? And in order for these routines to be effective for us, we need to understand better how to utilize them and how they can be helpful for us. So our first point about routine is routines help us create a familiar sense in new environments, right? Our routine should be portable, transferable, and even adaptable to whatever setting we're in. And that can help us as we transition into new spaces, bringing something familiar with us, because this is how we warm up. This is the movement that we prefer to do before we start our competition. This is a walkthrough that you like to do of just the facility when you arrive off the bus to get familiar with your settings. That could be your routine. Our second point, a routine helps an athlete stay focused on active and useful behavior. And so instead of having that time or that space where we're worried about the what ifs of a situation, if we're spending time doing what we need to do to prepare for that event, for that competition, for that game, that match, we're going to have a lot less time to be stuck worrying about the what ifs of that situation. And we'll actually be more prepared and more focused on what we need to accomplish versus what could happen that we have no control over. Our third point, a routine helps an athlete have control and confidence. And so our first time doing something versus our 20th time doing something versus our 100th versus our 1000th, there's going to be a big difference in confidence that we have. And so if we're doing this routine before practice, we're doing this routine before a competition, we've seen this routine thousands and thousands of times. And the beautiful part about it is we're going to be comfortable with it and we're going to be confident that we can execute it. So we're starting the day off on a win. Our fourth point, routines help make useful behavior automatic. And so when we practice something the correct way or we're focused on the correct techniques of it, we're helping prevent ourselves learn how to do that thing correctly versus learning that skill with mistakes in it. And yes, as we learn and take on new skills, it's going to take a little bit for us to get these skills correct. But once we know the skill, we want to be able to practice it mistake-free so that we become automatic when we need that skill within our competition, in our matches, in our game. And so why wouldn't we have a routine to practice that, to create that positive habit, to make that behavior automatic for us? Our fifth point, routines help the brain focus on the right things. And if we're a consistent athlete or we're aiming to become a consistent athlete, we need to have consistent practice, consistent habit, and consistent behaviors around that will help us be more consistent in our gameplay. You don't become clutch overnight, but by having these habits back to back, we can become reliable people for our teammates, reliable competitors for ourselves, and reliable challengers when it comes to the opportunity for us to take on more within our sport or more within our skill set. And so our brain has a limited capacity. If we aren't focused on what we need to be focused on, we're distracted. And that distraction can take us away from being fully engaged or fully capable to take on these challenges with our complete skill set. And if we've got an entire toolbox that we can access at a given moment, we're going to be much more successful in our building and our interest than if we have this full toolbox that we can only access a part of it, and we're actually limited knowing that we have the tool or the skill that we need for that thing, but knowing that it's off limits because we didn't put our emphasis on the right things. Our sixth point, routines help reduce thinking and decision making. And so if we're not worried about having to make a bunch of different choices or having to take on these different things that might not be important right now, and we're able to prioritize our competition, we're going to be much less distracted, which allows us to be much more present with what we're trying to accomplish. And a present athlete is one that is going to be set up for peak performance, let alone even an opportunity to be in flow for their performance. But we need to have these routines to get us set up to be ready to handle these situations so that we can adapt, right? If we don't have a baseline, there's no foundation for us to build these routines on. And so these routines set a level playing field for us as far as being able to just be ready. And if we're ready, we have a chance to take off. And lastly, number 7, routines help us prevent dumb mistakes. So if we're starting to get worried because we're in an unfamiliar setting, or there's different things going on, or maybe even in a travel situation where we're not in the place that we normally are, these routines bring about a familiarity for us to be able to succeed, because we become more vulnerable to distraction when we are leaking our energy by not being able to focus on the things we need to prepare for that competition. And so if we're able to spend more time focusing on our competition, and we know where we need to be, at what time we need to be, with what level of preparedness we need to be, we're going to be that much more ready for when the time comes, when our name is called, when the bell goes off, when the buzzer rings, when the ball is tossed, you name it, the serve comes our way, we're going to be ready for it. And we'll be able to avoid those little mistakes that have nothing to do with our skill in the sport, but has everything to do with our ability to be prepared. Not only is it on our athlete and individuals to get themselves ready with these routines, but a coach also serves an important role in making these things attainable for an athlete. So if we're not organized with our itineraries, we're not organized with our agendas, we're not organized with our practice plans, it's going to make it a lot harder for our athletes to produce consistent and reliable results from their practices, from their trainings, and from all these other pieces that they are working so hard on. So why not make it easier for everyone involved? And we create these routines, and these routines can be updated, they can be adapted, but if we know where to be and we have that consistency with our timing and our protocol, it's only going to make it that much easier for us to be successful and for excellence to be a habit of what we do every day, and not just something that you talk about. Excellence is not the spoken word. It's not a great speech that's given. Excellence is day in and day out work, and consistency within that work, and the strive and fight that you have to make that a priority. So if you don't have a pre-competition routine right now, or a pre-practice routine, this is my encouragement for you to figure that out right now. Or if you need more help, reach out to me. If you do have one, or you did have one, consider taking a look at it and figuring out where can you improve it, where can it be adapted if the time needs to change, or you don't have access to certain things if you're traveling that weekend. Take a look at it and really revise it so that you're ready for each of those situations. And then when you are preparing before your competition, you get to focus on just preparing for your competition. And lastly, remember that routines are not meant to be a limitation. They're not meant to slow you down. In fact, they're actually to help you streamline your performance, to create more consistent outputs, and for you to be ready for when the time is that you need to be ready. Join us again in 2 weeks as we take on our next sport and performance theme. Thank you for tuning into this week's 5 Minute Friday. Once again, I'm Dr. J, and as always, be refined by the grind.